What's up, guys? We're back with tip 4 in the Tone It's in the Hand series, and I don't have my guitar with me today because one of the things I wanted to talk about was pick and string gauges. Over the last year, I think this has become pretty important, especially for me, because I feel like my playing's been changing over, let's say, the last year or so. Been kind of getting to a place where I think I just been wanting to pick a lot harder. I've always had my settings set up to where I used a specific string gauge, and I tried to set it up to where I can play fairly easy, but still, being able to play all the fast stuff, but still maintain all the stuff for the heavy rhythm stuff. And I've just been getting into a lot of other players who are just really pick hard. I mean, I've always been a big Paul Gilbert fan, but recently I've been getting into guys like Emil Wursler, who are just, such, aggressive pickers. And I was just like, man, I got really inspired by that. I was just like, I think I want to start, upping up my string gauge, because when I started trying to pick like that, and naturally too, I think I've just been, especially since I've been recording over the last couple of years, really trying to get this attack out of my playing, which is some of the things I've been talking about in some of the previous videos. But when I started playing like that with the string gauge that I've been using, it was just the strings, they couldn't hold. Like I pick and, the strings just almost, they're too loose for that kind of attack. So I wanted to go over with you guys some of the stuff that I've been using and what I'm using now as far as string gauge goes and picking. So, alright, here we go. So what I used to use for a lot of my rhythm stuff, especially pretty much anything I did in the old archaic stuff, or even my last, the solo album I just recorded, I was using this, the D'Addario 9-46, and I thought this was a perfect string gauge because I felt that it was not too heavy, not too light, and it allowed me to really just kind of, play as smooth and easy as I wanted. But over time, when I started picking harder, the strings were so loose for that tuning. I also tune in C# standard, but when I started really picking hard, I felt like the strings, they just give out. They just had this really kind of tinny kind of sound, and I just felt like I needed to move up. I started using the gauge I'm using now a couple years back, and I think at the time my playing wasn't adapted for it, so I had to kind of try to work a little bit harder than what I was used to. So what I did was, I was like, I'm going to up the gauge and see how that works. And what I'm currently using now, which I think is perfect for what I'm trying to do, is actually picked up the DR high voltage 10-52. And, playing this for about a week, I felt is definitely the gauge I needed to use. I just needed to kind of work a little bit harder than what I was used to, because having such lighter gauge strings before, you have to kind of, up your strength a little bit. But now it feels perfectly comfortable. I've been using these for about, let's say maybe a couple months or so now. And one of the benefits out of this, and how this regards the tone, is that when I was using the thinner gauge strings, I almost feel like if you're tuning lower, you need to up the gauge on your strings. It really enhances the tone, I think, especially when you're playing more riffing kind of stuff. Having that thicker gauge, I think it enhances the bass response, and just having that kind of more of a fuller tone. So if you've been thinking about upping your gauge, or feel like maybe the string gauge you're using isn't quite what you are looking for, definitely try either upping it or lowering it, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing lower tunings, I would suggest upping the string gauge, definitely getting something thicker, because it's going to allow you to really pick the string and get the most out of your guitar sound. And also, the strings are going to respond. They're going to hold up to whatever you're doing. They're not going to give out. As far as picks go, I still continue to use these. I think these are great. I use the purple Dunlop Gator picks, 0.96 millimeter, and I think these are awesome. I mean, I've experimented with the jazz picks and that kind of thing, but I don't know. I feel like with those kind of picks, they just fall out of my hand. And I need something that I can grip onto But I used to use like the green Tortex ones. I saw that Kurt Hammett used to use those back in the day, and I was like, oh, I want to try those because Kurt Hammett used them. But I came across these. I don't remember how long or how I came across these, but ever since I found them, I think they're great. As far as the actual sharpness of the pick, it's perfect. I don't think it's too pointy, too sharp. It doesn't get in the way. It allows me to perfectly kind of pick through the string, and there's like no resistance. As far as the thickness goes, it's not thin. It's not giving when I actually pick, but at the same time, it's not super thick to where I feel restricted in any way. So what's cool about this is it allows me to kind of, however I want to attack the string, I learned the pick in the way to where you can kind of get all the different tones you want. And the next video coming up after this is going to be bending and string vibrato. And until then, just check out all the other videos, and I'll see you then. Thanks.